People think, hey, I'll build some very great experience, so people will naturally come and pay for it. I'll build something very cool, so naturally people should start using the product. I think
Apple.
Yeah, I think what most people didn't realize is, and exactly, an Apple went overboard in understanding the customer. What were the challenges? The empathy that you need to have for your users is what I have realized makes a good from a great or even a true PM or PM, right? Are you actually solving a problem?
People are sent to do frontline sales first.
Yeah.
Then they are sent to do product marketing. Then they are sent to do branding, right? So there is this journey which is for two. Why? Because unless and until you do sales for a good 3 years, 4 years, you will not understand what the market is, what the marketing problems are, what the competitor is doing, and so on and so forth, right? Hi everyone. Welcome to this podcast. My name is Krishna. I am the Chief Product Officer for Perfios. And I have a friend with me here, Gautam Mahesh. He's the product head for Volt Money. And we have known each other for quite some time. We have been on probably not the same organization, but we have interacted with each other quite a bit. Because as you know, Fintech is a very, very, very small world. Probably the one thing which is common between us is that both of us are product managers and both of us have been in Fintech for... Between us, I think we have 25 years of Fintech product management experience.
True.
And that is something which we have in common as Fintech product managers. We just thought that we would talk to each other and understand the journey which led us here and see if there is any kind of learnings which we can share with each other and probably some advice for people who really want to be in Fintech and people who want to be product managers. So with that in mind, let me just kick it off.
Perfect. Hey everyone. So glad to be here. I think being in Volt Money or the journey has been very enriching. So happy to share my thoughts and chime in obviously as much as possible, being honest and unfiltered.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's start with something which is a little more how do I put it? Which is talked about a lot in budding product managers, especially. Somewhere in 2014, 2015, there was this article which came out saying that product managers, you are the CEO of your product. Would you want to share how true do you think that is and how applicable it is?
Very interesting question, and I think I can't find anything more misused or rather abused terminology, right? So what I've generally seen is I think most people tend to think that, hey, like I can do anything as a PM. I own the entire product. I can do from business, tech, etc. Right? So I think what most PMs are, even actually I've seen not just budding PMs, even certain seasoned folks in the initial years feel that, hey, even a CEO can do everything. Right? Override decisions. So they try to index on that. So a lot of this, and as you're right, I was in campus back then, and this is something actually that got a lot of us very excited that, hey, look, wow, I'll do something out of the world. And back then, product was just starting off in India. So what I have generally found is, as a PM, yes, you do drive a lot of decisions. You do own the outcomes. You do have to work with a lot of people. But can you take all the decisions on your own or override anybody? Like, actually a CEO would? The answer would be a very obvious no. You have to work collaboratively. You have to understand the problem statements. Do the ROI justify the efforts of the organization? What is the opportunity cost? So I think a lot of this, I've realized, has come from a lot of Western influences where PMs typically tend to be fairly strategic in their role upwards. They start off post couple of at least 5 to 6 years of experience in the product space, and where they do have, which is fair amount of decision-making authority. And I think, but I would say that is, at least in the Indian landscape, I would say that is not really holding true. I would say, yes, you are the CPO of your product, or at least a part of the product, the journey that you own. But I think CEO is, I would still say, a long way, at least, for most organizations.
Yeah. So don't get me wrong. I don't think that it's not something which is a powerful position. Definitely, it's a powerful position. But CEO has a larger mandate. CEO can, as you rightly pointed out, override a lot of decisions. What is the PM's job? Let's get into that, and probably you can share your perspective and I can share mine.
Sure.
I think the first term which comes to my mind is you are the person in the room who is standing on behalf of the customer. That's exactly. That's your job. That's if you're not doing that, then any kind of product managers, you can say that I'm a technical product manager, I'm a customer product manager, I'm a marketing product manager. It doesn't matter. You're not doing the job.
Correct.
What I mean by that is that if let's say that there is a debate happening on, let's say, we don't want to build this feature, or we want to build this feature, or we want to build this feature in a certain way, and you know that it is going to impact your customer negatively,
Right.
and you're not standing up for it,
Exactly.
I'm sorry, you're not a peer. That is one. The second thing, which is also very important, second word which is important to me from a PM lexicon is influence. You don't have reporting relationship with everybody who needs to come together to create what you want to create. So what does that mean? It basically means that the engineers don't report to you. Some places the designers don't report to you. Some places the sales doesn't report to you. Some places the ops doesn't report to you.
Marketing or
The marketing doesn't report to you. So how do you get things done? Do you sit and say, hey, you know what, give me the reporting relationship and I'll get it done. I'll force it down. I'll get it done quickly. I'll do it faster. This person, sorry. Again, soft power is an essential component of being a product manager. So for me, influencing and customer centricity are two core things which a product manager does. I'll add one more to it, but before that, I would want to hear you on this aspect.
No, I think I 100% echo those sentiments, right? So I say PM would have generally found is, yes, there are times when you can take decisions, but yes, your first principle should be always, or you should be biased towards the customer, unless you're doing something wrong by doing it, right? Like yes, there is, in fintech especially, I can echo that I can build a lot of journeys, lot of things, cool stuff, but doesn't necessarily mean that it is compliant, right? It operationally work. So yes, to think from the customer shoes, understand many times even the internal. So I tend to use the word user than customer most of the time, so because many platform PMs or the backend PMs tend to build for operational efficiency the way e-com and a lot of these industries tend to do. So I think yes, the empathy that you need to have for your users is what I have realized makes a good from a great or even a true PM, a PM, right? Are you actually solving a problem? Are you actually directing, as you said, a PM, even within a couple of years, even in the Indian landscape, is a fairly strategic or has a fair amount of KPIs in terms of ROI, getting decision buying, etc. So what I have realized is adding on that empathy, able to understand the trade-offs. So in terms of not, as you rightly said, I might want to build a fancy product, but will sales be able to sell it? I can build a cool product in a B2C experience, but can I actually make sure that it's economically profitable for me? If I'm burning money just to convert in a funnel, then you're really not doing a good job as a PM either, right? So,
True.
so I think, yes, you have the decision making, but you have to operate within a lot of constraints. Is what I would say. That question hard. A lot of the times I have personally realized most PMs tend to be biased. Hey, I come from a lending background. This is the way it is done, and I have learned this the hard way, to be honest, in many times. But this is why we were doing this, so we'll continue to do this. So I think that is something I would encourage PMs to think very hard. Is this what is relevant in the current context? So
good. So we spoke about customer centricity and we spoke about influencing. I'll use two more words which are going to flip us a little bit into the controversial territory. And it's okay, because I think as someone who has spent 10, I have spent probably like a little bit more years in being a product manager. I think it is good to talk about these things, because otherwise nobody else will talk about it.
Exactly.
So the two things, other things which I wanted to talk about is the business sense, okay, or in if I use it in an Indian context, dhanda. Now, it is it basically raises the hackles even of seasoned PMs when you say that boss, dhanda hoga, and people are basically like, boss, if it's a good product, it will sell itself. No, sorry. If it's a good product, it is not going to sell itself. It might be the best product ever possible to be created. It will not sell itself.
Exactly.
Your organization's skill set, your organization's status versus the competition, your organization's need for building that product, your organization's annual operating plan and the budget within that product is going to be built. I'm sorry, but you have to get into all of these nitty-gritties anyway. That is the first part of it, which is dhanda. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that. But let me just add one more controversial statement. And I'll just say a word and I'll leave it at that. I'll want you to talk about it. Execution. Right? There is a whole perspective that, so before the product manager became a product manager, there was something called as a project manager back in the service industry. Somehow there seems to be a little bit of a gap that, hey, you know what, execution is not really my job. And I vehemently disagree with it. And I would talk more about it. But I first want to hear your thoughts on these two things, dhanda and execution.
I think two things which I have written extensively when I was running the community or on LinkedIn as well. So let's take the dhanda thing to the business impact. I think a lot of it has been written about, again, a lot of it taken from the Western context where people think, hey, I'll build some very great experience, so people will naturally come and pay for it. I'll build something very cool, so naturally people should start using the product. I think
Apple.
Yeah, I think what most people didn't realize is, and exactly, an Apple went overboard in understanding the customer. What were the challenges?
Yeah.
And it was not just, they were clear, they are going after a fairly niche segment vis-a-vis what Microsoft was doing, but they also were aware that that was a segment which had the propensity to pay. And they valued the capabilities they were bringing to the table, be it how sleek they brew it, etc. But so going back, I think one of the things which exactly I keep anchoring, I keep telling folks is, what is the delta? What is the business impact we'll build by doing this? End of the day, the way I look at in product is just two things. Your impact metrics will directly impact your top line or will help you impact the bottom line. You reduce costs. In a fintech or a regulatory, I cover the cost side of things on the bottom line. So that you're reducing costs, automating things, or you launch new products. So exactly. So I think understanding the business nuances, and I think, as you rightly said, right, a lot of the times people think, hey, this is a very nice looking product, so it should sell. Or this is a very cool looking product, it should sell. But what people don't, a lot of the PMs tend to assume is, hey, I have a buy-in from my business team. I'll have a buy-in from my leadership. I think a lot of the time they don't spend enough time on buying. They tend to get directly into execution, which I come to it, I think. But I think that is where I have realized, or rather I have tried to see from the lens saying, am I actually adding or driving a direct or at least an indirect business impact? So if I'm improving experience in a way a payment is done or a way KYC is done in a flow, that should naturally have an impact, right? I would not just want to add a new integration just because, hey, some competitor would be.
Yeah.
So I think, yes. But that said, I've also, like what I've seen again, working with PMs, coaching folks is, I think that business sense, that understanding has evolved quite well, at least post-COVID, especially when there was a fair amount of disruption in the general product industry, etc. I've seen that now PMs actually care about business impact. And I think a lot of it credit also goes to the non-product or non-tech orgs who try to instill that business sense. So I think that is my take. But yes, that said and done, that sometimes you don't have a direct tangible benefit I can attribute, like a branding. Right? Yes, by doing a very good branding, can I directly necessarily drive business impact? Maybe not. But I think that alignment, the clarity, the clear understanding why you're doing that branding initiative, redesign, or thinking of the flow is something that I would say the PM needs to have or understand and have that alignment internally.
Sure.
So that's my take on dhanda, etc. And I think it's evolved.
You used a very critical word, I think. Sorry, I used the word dhanda, but I think you used a better word, honestly. You used the word impact. Many times what happens is that a particular element in a particular roadmap gets picked up or doesn't get picked up, right? And obviously the product lead or the product manager or the product head knows why it is getting picked up. But convincing the entire larger audience or in the organization saying that why is this being picked up? I think making everything into metrics is not easy, but I would say that it is something which is required.
Yes.
The reason I'm saying that, and you probably nailed it by a very good example of the branding part of it, right? Branding is just one example of that. You are doing something to improve customer satisfaction, which is like a very, very, very common thing which most of the PMs pick up.
Exactly.
But then the challenge which they face is, hey, we don't even measure CSAT. So can we put CSAT metrics in place, CSAT measurement in place first, then we can talk about it. The whole line item gets derailed because there is no CSAT. But you know from your gut that you have to do it. So where does the fine line lie between proving with metrics that a particular line item needs to be executed and it will contribute to impact in some way versus your own gut?
It's a very good question. And honestly, I don't have a very straightforward answer. But I think let's take the example of branding or CSAT, right? I think so two very stark examples. One which is more at a company level, a product branding. There I still would say you can still measure in a way. At a corporate level, if I'm redesigning the website, I'm thinking of it something differently, you should get much better candidates, right? Or like at least the top of the funnel should improve from a hiring perspective, from a market awareness perspective. So I would say that can I measure everything directly? And you also come from a very strong data background,
Yeah.
right? The answer is not necessary.
Yeah.
But can I measure or use a proxy for each of this? The answer would definitely, I would like to think it's yes. At least if some kind of correlation, some kind of causality, you would understand why am I rebranding the website? Why am I rethinking of the app? So we had a very big payments company recently rethink of the app experience, etc. So I'm sure there is a lot of thought process going and should go as well, right? But so short answer is you should have some kind of leading metrics. Yes, you might not be able to achieve it, or it might not be directly impacting, but that is where something like a CSAT comes.
But what do you have to say for statements which are made sometimes, which are like, hey, you know what, if we went around asking customers what they want, we would have not built what we wanted to build. Customers don't know what they need. We have to evangelize what they need and then build it. So sometimes you have to build purely from your gut and you probably don't even have the market research to build it. What do you have to say for that?
So I think that was on the Model T that actually came up with Mr. Ford, right? That customers just wanted a faster horse, not really a new car.
Yeah.
So I think we need to segregate this or contextualize it in two kind of industries or segments, right? One where you're trying to disrupt or trying to do something out of the blocks, right? The way we had some Gen AI companies come up. So they talked very disruptively. So as you said, a lot of it was the ecosystem doing well. But when you look at OpenAI, or for that matter, Anthropic or whatever Perfios is doing, they were able to understand, get some macro trends, understand, again, tying into from a business sense perspective, where the market is doing, and they were able to nail it. But yes, there are a lot of things they are also still figuring out how to make things work, I'm sure. And there are a lot of AI companies who are still nowhere close to making money. So I would say, yes, there is a lot of gut going when you have to disrupt things. And these are things you should be aware as a PM or even as a leadership across function that this is a gut-based call. You might not really have very strong market research saying exactly knowing your TAM, what is the sum. You might fail. So that is something as a PM, if you're taking a call or even a senior person, like somebody like me, I'm very clear saying, hey, a lot of it is assumption-based, or we are assuming this is how the macro trends will move. So we should piggyback on it or build towards it.
So I think I like to answer it in a little bit different way. I basically say, how many times has new industries like cars been created, like Ford Model T? How many times has it happened that a new Facebook was created? I think in your gut, every PM knows whether the idea which he or she is suggesting is a Ford Model T kind of an idea or an enhancement.
Exactly.
It is completely fine to do enhancement. It is in fact required to do enhancement.
Exactly.
And when you know that, decide, and when you so first of all, you're probably doing 5% of path-breaking, innovative work.
Exactly.
And there is 95% innovative work, but in an enhancement.
Optimizations, right?
Optimizations, enhancements, so on and so forth. So know that these 5% is something as a company, my company can swallow as a loss if something like that happens. If that clarity is there, please go ahead with your gut. But know what type of company you're in. You're sitting in a startup, which is a Series A funded startup. You will have 20, 30, 50% more gut ideas. It's totally fine. You're sitting in a well-established, well-run, very straightforward company where literally every single metric is signed off before it goes to production, before it goes to even getting signed off, the PRD getting started. Probably you need to think differently. So I think that is where I would come in from that angle. I used another word, which was execution.
Yeah, I come to that.
And execution is a very touchy topic. So I have mentored probably like teams of PMs which I had over the years, and this is something which has been a very touchy topic for me. I have faced challenges with my team, and I'm sure you have faced challenges with your team. Do you want to probably talk about a few of them, and I'll do the same?
Sure. So I think I've at least in my career worked with two kind of PMs. One, rather not, I'm just generalizing in the context of execution. One who index too much on execution. So they just want to, as you rightly said, right? They want to optimize, they want to enhance. They don't want to think a lot of out of blocks. They have specific KPIs and they just want to keep on making that back end changes, front end changes, and they're just happy. Do they add value? Yes, definitely they add value. And as I was saying, like they add actually a lot of tangible business impact. The other extreme I've seen is folks who are like, hey, I want to be the next Steve Jobs, I want to be the Zuckerbergs or a Bill Gates. I'll do something very different. I'll only think out of the box, but don't want to get into the grind, don't want to actually sit on the execution side, figure out what is the tech stack like, understand the business impact, understand how the company actually makes money. And this is even more critical in a non-SaaS startup, where a B2C or a B2B2C, where you have multiple streams. Sometimes a particular feature can actually improve your revenue, but also increase your cost a lot more. So I think these folks actually understand these things quite well. But end of the day, I've seen the best of the PMs, or the ones who are actually able to drive impact, are the ones who actually are able to balance this out.
Yeah.
And when I say execution, again, I would like to clarify here. I think we use the word project manager. So similarly, we've seen the business analyst, etc. I think one of the things I have generally seen is that most PMs tend to get too much into development work. So when they say execution, it's not just getting into the pit and just doing things, but they start thinking, hey, and I've seen this in a lot of CVs. I'm sure you'd also seen that, manage the team, ran the sprints. Like, why? Your job is execution, not product development. So I think first call out, I would say execution is executing as a PM and not as a tech lead or engineering manager. So I think I would want to split that out, be very categorical, that as a good PM in any good org, decently well established or even a good startup, you are indexing on product management related execution. Should be. Now coming to the point, I think to be very clear, I think execution, as you say, as you scale up, as you ramp up, like you have to do some level of execution. Even after 10 years, I'm sure even after 15 years, right? Even you'll now be looking at certain requirements, reviewing certain releases, checking out how it's working, looking at metrics. I can't just say, hey, look, I'll tell one of the PMs to come and report it. Tell me how the impact is. So I think execution again is what I've seen is a spectrum that as at your early stages of a career, you have to be pretty execution heavy, understand how your tech stack works, understand what are the APIs involved, understand a lot of nitty-gritties around the design elements. And as you ramp up, yes, you do get a bit hands-off, but we should still be grounded enough to understand that, hey, this is what are the constraints I have from a business, from a tech, and operate from that way, right? So I think, so just to summarize or rather double click, do I expect a PM to manage sprints? When I say manage, I mean say this dev should work, etc. Not really. But yes, there should be, end of the day, you can only drive impact when you execute. So even somebody who has a couple of analysts or APMs under them would have to mentor them, guide them, ask those hard questions. And that is hard execution. You have to write those PRDs, you have to review those specs, you have to review the solution documents, whenever I call that execution. I
That
can't,
is execution.
and not just managing. So I've seen a lot of people who've actually also told me your job is to just manage and manage stakeholders, let the PMs manage the execution. But I kind of beg to differ. I would, yes, align work with stakeholders, but focus, that is my execution side. And I would say my planning side is, yes, program managing the PMs. That's my take at least.
Interesting. Because the experience which I've always had is execution is looked down upon. And
Yes.
I want to be, very blatant and candid about it, because there's no point we can share this with each other and this audience. So I think there is a whole fallacy that once I have thought about things, I'm done. Probably you're 20% done. When you're thought about things and your PRD is signed off, you're 20% done.
Exactly.
The reason I'm saying that is because hitting production on a particular deadline is not something which is only the project manager's job. Because the same project manager would face a ton of issues from QA, from the BA, from incomplete requirements, from the fact that you're not taken into account certain technical challenges, architectural limitations, when you gave that deadline to the top manager. And I'm saying you, because you cannot say that, hey, you know what, the engineering team gave the deadline, I didn't give the deadline. Doesn't work like that. You are the product owner. The very basis, and we talked about influencing at the beginning of this, is that you don't have authority on every single aspect, but you have responsibility for the end outcome. That is the reality. There is absolutely no way you can say that, hey, you know what, this is unfair. Yep. Sorry, that is exactly the job of a product manager. So coming back, ensuring that the deadline is met, which you have committed, is a job of the product manager. After that particular thing, ensuring that it tests well in the market or it gets launched in the market and you get feedback from it is your job. More importantly, telling your organization if it is working well is your job.
Exactly. Agreed.
I think this is something which is like very discounted, because ho gaya na, ab to ho gaya na, to kar diya na. Arey, the fact that you have invested your team's bandwidth, your engineering team's bandwidth, your design team bandwidth, your marketing team bandwidth, and you have built something and now it is going in the market and doing something well or not well, intimating or ensuring that everybody is kept informed about that and showing the impact is your job.
Agreed.
Right? And once that particular thing is done, then starts the next 30% of your work, which is, do I need to enhance it? Do I need to maintain it? Do I need to scrap it? To scrap it is also a decision which you need to take. You can't keep every single product running.
Exactly.
Because of the fact that you already invested. So in poker there is a terminology called there is basically a terminology called cash in pot. You basically, you already put a lot of cash in pot and now you are sunk value. So you know what, I'll raise. Doesn't work like that.
Yeah, sunk cost.
Right? You take your bets. You ensure that, you keep measuring what is the output of the product. This entire bit, and exactly like you pointed out, is execution. And not figuring out exactly who is the developer who is going to develop this, how much time does he have on today, can I optimize? That is not your job, right? So I think while we are saying this, I hope that, the audience who's looking at this has some clarity on what is expected out of a product manager, right?
So I just want to chime in right on that deadline. So again, I have had a very contrasting polar experience. One, in certain organization where I've been told for this scope or whatever this is the timeline. Engineering solely owns timeline. Product's job is to make sure you're building for the right reason. Building the right things. And I say two things in product, right? Build right things, build things right. One is obviously thinking, another is more execution.
Sure.
So I think just to index on the deadline, I think, and the other extreme is where the PM, as you said, owns the deadline, right? So I like to call out co-ownership at least.
Yeah.
When I say co-ownership, that you need to be very clear, especially when you're doing a big rollout, a new line of business or a new product line. Be very clear. What is your constraint? Is it time? Is it the scope? Is it what kind of customers are you building for? Which segment are you building for? And that is where I've seen a lot of PMs, and I have also made these mistakes, to be very honest, where I've taken a massive scope on day one, what should have been a V2 version of it or even a V3 version. And I decided, hey, look, we front load it. I'll expect higher adoption, which honestly didn't work. And I think that is where I would say that wear that hat, understand the effort that engineering needs or QA needs. As you said, right? Bake out, they carve out that 20, 30, what's absolutely no go to launch on a day one. Index on that. Focus on it. If that is meeting the deadline, as you were telling, maybe take a bit more if absolutely justifies. Otherwise, launch fast, understand, iterate, or scrap. And I have had to scrap a lot of products.
Okay. All of us had.
So
I think the reason why I use the word deadline is because, and I didn't use the word co-ownership like you used, is because, see, the only person in the team who understands the business, why a business is asking for a particular element to go live, or why you have committed to your own business that a particular element will go live by a certain date, is the PM, number one. Number two is that the only person who understands why the technology team cannot deliver this or why it is not possible to deliver this by a particular timeline is the PM. And then the only person who can either influence the product managers or he himself being a product manager can carve out an MVP out of the original requirements is the product manager. So because of the fact that he is the only person who can do all these things, he can either go and cut down the scope or he can go and talk to the engineers and figure out, are they, for example, if let's say that they are building something for a future thought process of platformization, is this ever going to be platformized in your mind? Does it need to be built like that? That understanding is something which the product manager will have. And at the same time, going back to the business and saying, listen, I know that I had promised you this particular date, but I've talked to the business folks there or the requirement there or the customer on the ground, and this doesn't seem to be a requirement anymore.
Exactly.
Right? Or a lighter version of this is good enough because our competition is going to launch something much lower value than this. So that understanding is where the PM comes in, and that is why I say that the commitment of the deadline and the ownership of the deadline still needs to lie with the product manager. I understand different organizations operate differently. If you go to a very, very large organization, you cannot say this.
Yes.
Because engineering teams have a huge process which they follow, which has been honed and polished and perfected over time.
Exactly.
So yes, I understand that from a large organization perspective, but in mid-size, small-size organizations, I think this is something which is only. But I think the original reason why I used the word execution is what you talked about in terms of the two extremes of product managers, the strategic and the nitty-gritty. I think especially junior PMs, and you said it so perfectly that junior PMs, you have to over-index on execution to start with. Why are we saying that? We sound like a bunch of old wives, clipping about new PMs, but why are we saying that? What is the logic behind saying that? Why can't a new PM start dreaming big and creating a completely new solution out of thin air? Why can't they do that?
It's a very good question, right? I mean, I have myself, been in this position where, so I try to follow a philosophy of understanding or getting a context, even if that means that I have to spend be a couple of weeks more in the organization, in the trenches, for I actually start aligning things, working on things, even as a mid-level, senior person, right? So I think you'll be able to appreciate the nuances, right? And the effort, the way the stack is architected, or the way the processes are aligned, the way, as you said rightly, right? How do how the sprints are aligned, which developer is good, or rather who's the right developer. I don't want to say who's good or bad. I think we should not go in that direction. I think that is where execution is very critical. I don't just tell aspiring or budding PMs. I even told this to some of my peers in other organizations that even somebody with a 10 years, you should write a couple of requirements in the first couple of months. Things might not work out, your PMs, your reportees might correct it, but that's when you'll appreciate the nuances, even as a senior person, that, hey, the PM requires this much of time to think, understand the market dynamics, understand the economics, if they have that kind of KPI. Think of the trade-offs, think of the approaches, right? So that is where I also tried. That is why execution, as per me, matters. You get a very 360-degree understanding. Hey, how is the DB handled? What kind of metrics can I get on day one? How do I ensure that, what is my support team? How do they operate? What is it that challenges that they face when you're talking to customers? So I think the best PMs I've found, irrespective of their grade or the experience, or for that matter, the kind of companies, they start executing. They understand, hey, I need to be in the trend. So there are two things, just to sort of digress. One, pure what I call, so in the PM, I tend to categorize skills into largely two buckets: hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills as pure execution, writing PRDs, right, doing wireframes, going writing SQL queries or kind of putting up metrics, whatever, etc. Right? Sure. And that is one part. But the real thing really comes up, and you would agree, is the soft skills. How do you influence? How do you align people? Now, when you don't know how the hard skills, or rather how your stack works, how your entire back office works, how your operations work, how your processes works, how will you align people? Right? I mean, as you rightly said, the PM is the one who's owning, or at least has a 360 degrees perspective. I can't go to a CBO and tell, or a business head and say, I don't know why that target is like this. So with what is the scope, we'll take 6 months instead of 3 months. So I think that is where I try to say that start executing, yes, depending on the kind of grade or the position, you, and the company org style as well, you taper off. But that's when you actually develop that confidence, that context, that understanding of things, for you to actually start thinking strategically. Because I think, again, strategically also, I think, as we called out, you can do disruptive. I launch a completely new line of business, completely new product line. Second is, as I said, I do enhancement where this is very, very high impact, not just optimization. I want to call it enhancement, where your V2 is crazy big. A lot of players in the market tend to do. So they do a quick dirty MVP, but next app which comes out in the next 2-3 months is crazy great.
No, I think the question which I'm trying to ask is more around, should a PM 1 year, 2 year, 3 year experience get into blue sky thinking, get into creating something which is like a completely new thing, is the question which I'm asking. And it's a little bit of a tricky question, and I'm sure there is no right answer for it, but what is your thought on it?
So I think, so it's again, as I said, there's no right answer for most of this, right? So there are two things. One is, depends on the kind of time you are spending on this blue sky, right? Like, what are you trying to do? Get into a blue ocean? Like, for you to even understand the macro, the dynamics, you will need a considerable amount of time. So if it is something that, hey, like you were talking to a customer, you're talking to a partner, and you just bumped into an idea or some feedback, on basis you have decided you can build something. So which is what I call as more of a bottoms up, right? You're getting feedback on the ground, and you just have to do. There, I would say, yes, all your entire strategic, or at least you can start thinking directionally. You can talk to a manager, understand if this is a project that maybe merits maybe a 20, 30, 40% bandwidth of the PM, and get into a bit more nuances, etc. Right? That is where I would like to think that in your early stages, you should think. It's not that you should not at all think. But again, should you be concerned on day one that, hey, I'll launch in a new market, or I launch a completely new product? And I would say that would, when yes, you can do, but you would be spending a lot of time iterations, which comes with over a period of time. You understand, etc. So I think that's what I would like to say. And as you get in contact, as I said, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, you have a better grasp of people, the processes, the macroeconomics, the dynamics that's there in the market, competitor. Yeah. And where you're more outward facing. You know what your competitors are doing. A lot of people at the junior level might more be aware, hey, how is this experience app? They might not be aware, hey, how are they monetizing? Are they cross-selling something? Or are they basically upselling something? Which I would expect somebody a bit more senior, right? Maybe 5, 6, maybe one more number of years to kind of have that nuanced understanding, and then maybe that's the way I would look at it.
So I would look at two aspects. The first one being experience. Okay, let me put it in a different way. I think every single PM, regardless of whether he or she is 1 year experience, 5 year experience, 20 years experience, should do blue sky thinking with the right expectation and the right preparations. What I mean by that is, first let's talk about preparation. If you are blue sky thinking based on the amount of secondary research which you have done, basically sitting and doing Google search at home or ChatGPT at home nowadays, sorry, don't do it. Exactly. That is not enough preparation. unless and until you're spoken to customers, unless and until you're spoken to competitors, unless and until you're spoken to your own product managers, spoken to your business folks, spoken to if you can, competitor PMs, competitor salespeople, right? Unless you've done that amount of research, your idea will be half-baked. There is no doubt in my mind, and this doesn't apply to only like the very experienced PMs. This applies to everyone. The person who is 1 year experience, 2 year experience, doesn't matter. True. But I think the second one is more important, which is the expectations. What is the expectations when you come out of the idea? Let's say that you come out with a blue sky thinking. Let's say that you've done all the due diligence and the research and so on and so forth, and you've written a beautiful, let's say, a white paper or a PRD, right? What is the expectation? If your expectation is that, you're going to be called in the next town hall and the CEO is going to felicitate you because you created a great idea which is going to get you the next 200 crore business, you are living in a little bit of a delusionary land, right? Because there are very good reasons why a company might not pick up a very, very solid looking idea. And second thing is that the way you might measure it as a good idea versus how the organization measures it as a good idea might be different, right? I'm not saying don't push your idea because you have spent enough time. If you have prepared your idea well, please push your idea. Please push your idea, talk about it, try to influence people around it, but don't go in with the expectation that I have prepared an idea and now I'm done. Your job starts after you have prepared the idea of a product manager, of influencing, selling that particular idea, if you believe that that's a good idea. And at the same time, just like any good product manager would scrape his or her product once it goes into the market, similarly, a good product manager will say, hey, you know what? I thought about it. This was well researched. This was well thought through, but this is probably not the right time or the right business to be in. Or, you know what? This is not the right organization. I want to go out and do this idea on my own. I'll raise money on my own. Be prepared for the consequences and don't expect a reward for thinking. That's my only request, right? Please do blue sky thinking. And I know that, and this is something which I know for a fact. I've been saying this to multiple people. I regret not being able to write PRDs, not having enough time to write PRDs, because probably writing PRDs is, again, this is a very personal choice. For a product manager, for me as a product manager, the best thing which I can do is write PRDs, and I don't find enough time to write PRDs of my own nowadays. But yeah, that is something which is good. So yeah. Anyway, let's go a little bit back into our histories. How did you step into product management?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and I've been asked a lot. So I think my journey has largely been entirely in fintech, pre and post my masters. So started off in the banking, insurance, and when I got into B school as well. So I think got a product role from a very fairly well-known, lending SaaS B2B company.
Nice.
Kind of found a very natural fit. Had worked a lot on similar platforms as a BA/developer.
Sure.
So found it very interesting. In fact, people actually asked me that, and it was not a very big brand, maybe like Amazon or a Flipkart, as much as the people I actually was asked questions that, hey, why are you letting go of such big brands and getting into a slightly lesser known company? And as I said, this is in 2014, 15, my product was still taking off.
Yeah.
And fintech or even related SaaS companies were still just propping up.
Yeah.
I can't recollect more than 5-6 companies in that space. Build SCC. This was a very fairly legacy and very large enterprises were there. So I think that's how my journey started, to be honest. So one of the things when I actually, for me also is actually called updated back B school was, so I used to interact with a lot of we had a lot of European clients in my company then. So they were strategic people, strategic in the sense actually from business strategy, few of them from product strategy. So this was pre when there was not a lot of product community. So this was back then in 2011, 12, 13. They actually told, hey, this is something that happens here, etc. And maybe I had a few cousins as well who were in the US.
Very nice.
And some big tech companies. So kind of reached out. They also told, hey, it might not be the most lucrative. And back then business roles and even a lot of ops roles paid quite better than product back then. So I was like, hey, let me take the plunge. I mean, what are the chances? Worst case, maybe I'll switch over in a year or two at the most. And to be honest, I would not say it's accidentally, but I would say yes, I had an understanding, and with kind of being at the right place, right time.
That I think is the core.
Exactly.
Any PM in India who's done or started PM at the time when I started in 2014, I started in 2011-ish, cannot discount the factor of luck.
100%.
I don't think that till around 2018 there were proper PM roles with PM job descriptions in the market at all, right? So whatever happened before that, 2015, 2012, 2010, were product managers becoming product managers out of a little bit of luck and a little bit of a risk-taking ability to say that, hey, you know what, this is a new thing, we'll try it, let's see what happens. And that's exactly what happened with me. So just to give you a perspective, I wanted to be so I was crazy about marketing back in MBA, because all of us love Kotler, all of us love the word piece and stuff like that. And when they teach you in college, you are basically like, hey, you know what, this is what I want.
Very interesting. Exactly.
And who's your idol at that point of time? I interned in my idol, so in India's largest FMCG company. And obviously, I wanted to be there, and that is what I want to do. What I learned over the course of that year is probably something which I still apply, which is know your basics, right? Sure. So what I was told was, in this largest FMCG company in this country, people are sent to do frontline sales first.
Yeah.
Then they are sent to do product marketing. Then they are sent to do branding, right? So there is this journey which is followed. Why? Because unless and until you do sales for a good 3 years, 4 years, you will not understand what the market is, what the marketing problems are, what the competitor is doing, and so on and so forth, right? And then you do product marketing, which is a little more marketing, and then finally you can do branding. But
Which is the most coveted role on
which is exactly the point, right? Which is the most coveted role. But nobody gets that at the beginning.
Exactly.
I think unconsciously that has also played a bias in my mind in terms of product management. But what happened is that because I wanted to do marketing, I said I want to do sales. And again, by fortune, I ended up in financial services sales. I did that for a couple of years. And then this role opened up saying that, hey, we are trying to build this business, which is going to be something which is very unique. We need someone who can understand the business part of things and the technology part of things. I said, yeah, sign me up. And that's where it began. But I think all of us PMs, any PM who's watching this, who has probably started his or her journey before 2015, should thank his lucky stars or her lucky stars.
True.
That we all got into this boat. But I think that comes to the next interesting part of the question. Especially people, and you used a couple of very big examples like Amazon, Flipkart, so on and so forth. These are, and there are certain other companies in this country and across the world which are considered good product management practices companies, right? I think, and when you meet PMs, one of the things which they pride themselves on is the ability to say, hey, you know what, I'm domain agnostic. To say that, hey, I will basically be able to go into a new domain, learn very quickly, understand the domain so quickly, and then contribute from a first principles thinking perspective, from a customer centricity perspective, from a problem solving perspective, from a product thinking perspective. Both of us are people who have never done that. We have stuck to fintech for all our careers. I'm sure you have your reasons, I have my reasons. Let's talk about that, because I don't think that is a very logical thing for people to do.
Exactly.
I wouldn't recommend that, honestly. I wouldn't recommend that for a lot of folks. But we all have our reasons. So why don't you?
Sure. No, so I think, again, I would say happened by accident.
No, you entered by accident, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Why did you stick around for like 12 years in fintech?
So that's it. So the first company I kind of joined, I think the kind of exposure I got, and I think that is that is a benefit I would give it to them, that back then they were kind of market leader, and they were also, to be even at that stage, I think they were doing some very interesting things. Yeah, kind of gave me a lot of exposure, understanding lending, how LOS works, the LMSs work, etc. And this is even before you had, like, fintech or digital lending was like I can again hardly count 5 to 6 brands.
Yeah.
They were doing very very
Obviously.
small, right? So I think so as you said, right? Did I start off saying I want to be in fintech? I would say in a way, to some extent, yes. Again, because luckily had a lot of bankers in the family. So
Okay.
I used to ask them these questions again, right? Like, how is the money flowing? And like, this was even before B school where I actually learned some part of
Oh
it.
my God. So you had a
So-
big advantage.
I will not say it's an advantage.
Oh, come on.
No, who didn't have a banker in the family?
I didn't have a
Banker. Okay, cool. I mean, I would say as the audience, I'm sure everybody would have some banker or insurance, somebody in the LIC for sure, somebody in a SBI or a state bank or maybe not. But I think that's where kind of my journey, I would say, this is when when there was nothing called as digital net banking. The net banking only had just transfer, no IMPS. So I just started
Sure.
this curiosity. So that kind of blossomed how I started. But I think what really made me interesting is, as you said, right, how you start. You said you did a lot of sales, right? And then you said you signed up for being somebody at an intersection of business and tech. And I think that's what I saw fintech at. So a lot of people tend to think of fintech as just cool tech. Yeah, I built something just a very much better UI than what a bank, if you know, don't want to take specific banks name, but some of the biggest banks build. And I think that is where they tend to underplay or oversimplify, right? And tech is yes one part, but you need to have a fairly strong understanding of the BFS space. So that's how it kind of all came together. I found that domain itself, to be honest, very deep. And even after spending this many years in lending across secured, unsecured, SME, consumer, I still cannot say that I know the entire industry.
No, I don't
And-
think any of us can ever say that. I don't think we'll ever reach the end of it.
So,
But-
and I think that is how I think, as you rightly said, can I get into a e-com or a healthcare and apply that first principles? I mean, I like to think yes, and I'm sure you would also be able to do. But I think there are certain industries where your domain expertise is very valuable. Or like, right? While you are thinking first principles, you are also fairly constrained. Maybe in e-commerce is not really not that constrained. There is no regulatory, there's no major governance. As long as you're not flouting CC, etc. I'm just throwing examples like typical B2C companies, internet companies. So I think there, yes, first principles, you can switch a lot between industries. But I've also seen that for me it was merger and I've an amalgamation of two. And I've not seen this just with me. I feel like a lot of people in my network actually who entered fintech or rather even the financial services are like, hey, why should I move out? It's evolving. It's complex. And I think it's a moat, right? As a company, as an individual, you tend to, you are valued. And especially startups, mid-sized companies would be like, hey, I can rely on these kind of chaps to come in, maybe fit the ground.
I think this is a very, very interesting point. And I want to ask you two questions, right? The first question is about the fact that is domain knowledge becoming more important in fintech PMs, or is the product management aspect of it more important in fintech PMs?
It's a very good question. I think again I would say it's a mix of both. Because like if I am building a certain onboarding experience, like yes, I can sit and read RBI circulars, I can see if I'm in the investment space, see what SAB is saying, do all of that, understand, right? So I would say there is merits to both. And like some of my prior companies, we have heard from non-fintech, non-lending backgrounds. And that first perspective actually does help, especially when you're as a startup, you're trying to do something disruptive. And which is where, so the way I look at it is the product management, the first principles are non-negotiable. Your domain knowledge expedites your onboarding. Again, that plateaus, to be very honest, after a while. It just becomes a question of, not a matter of network and you people in the industry, you're running into a PM at, a peer at a similar company, right? So I think matters domain knowledge, but I would still index on that person's skills. But that said, again, I think a very critical part is that is a question of time to hit the ground running. So, and that's where a lot of very growth stage companies who've been a bit okay with paying a slightly premium, etc., have been like, cool, I cannot sit and explain to this PM from scratch how lending works. All of it. Or how,
I think that is a very critical aspect, right? I cannot explain how lending works.
Exactly.
Now,
I've not found a single book that explains.
No, it's not. Books can't explain that stuff. But the point is, why is that? I think there are a couple of things which you said which are very critical. One is that you said fintech PMs think of all this as a moat. I think of all this as a moat. I like to call myself someone who's an expert in fintech. I like to say that, hey, you know what, my domain knowledge is my moat. But why do we do that, and why do we stick around to fintech? I think there are a couple of reasons for that, for me at least. The first thing which I want to call out is that fintech or financial services as an industry is far older than food tech or e-commerce or any of those. So what happens is that the folks who are on the business side of things carry a much deeper expertise. The folks who are on the risk side of things, the folks who are on the analytics side of things, carry a much deeper expertise of the industry than people who are in e-commerce and people who are in this thing. So what is happening on e-commerce and what is happening in food tech is a little bit of a place where almost everybody is on the equal ground, and what they're trying to do is brainstorm together. True. On the other side of the spectrum, in fintech, it is basically you having to go, if I may use the word, toe to toe with a person who has 25 years experience in banking and trying to explain to him or her why the flow which you have created or the thought process which you have created might yield better results. True. For me, that's the high. For me, that's the challenge which I relish, because transforming things with technology is something which is a PM's core life skill. And I think in fintech, doing that with in a domain which is so seeped in history is something which gives me a big high. That is one. And I think the other reason is also a little bit more selfish, but is that this business generates money in a very beautiful way. I mean,
I think we can choose to disagree on a lot of that point. I'll just ask him. Yes.
Yeah. All my life I spent in B2C, and now I'm in SaaS. But oh my God, financial services.
You know how to make money? Yes.
The way financial services makes money is beautiful, right? Because it has, again, I think it is about the domain, right?
Yeah.
Because the understanding of the domain is with a few, the ability to make money correctly from that domain understanding is also resides with a few. True. That is why we have a very few successful banks, we have very few successful NBFCs, we have very few successful stockbroking arms, and so on and so forth, right?
True.
And predictions in this industry come true whether it takes 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years.
Has to happen.
Has to happen.
It's a matter of just RBI.
Just a matter of, exactly. So that is, I think, the best. That is why I love this. I love it. I mean, if you look at my LinkedIn, this thing, it's called, it's the Krishna Chaitanya Fintech. I am that invested. I keep talking to everyone. I'm married to fintech. I'm never leaving it. But yeah, I think that's probably the reason why we, so pretty selfish reasons, I would say.
Yeah. But I think you touched upon a very interesting point about the non-fintech folks, right? I think what I've also realized talking to a lot of them is that what they attribute is, in fact, there's a lot of first principle thinking that happens there. And also because you're not constrained.
Yeah,
I've actually found a lot of non-fintech PMs actually being extremely good.
100%.
Some product.
100%.
Because they're not constrained. But from just being contrarian, right? The challenge that I've mostly found those folks to is that I understand how e-com works, right? I'm an end user. I understand how food tech works. I understand pretty much how the back office works, how there's a rider partner, there's a delivery partner, cabs, yada yada. So which in the fintech, if it's the tip of the iceberg. The app, the banking app, the brokerage apps you're using is the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more in the back end, which as an end user, I am not exposed to. And which also I feel is where also I want to distinguish that there are, as we said, I think there are more platform, back-end heavy PMs who, as you rightly said, have that very strong moat than the more pure user-facing, where I've also seen people switch from e-com, B2C to fintech and vice versa. Because there, again, your first principle is same. I have to reduce drop-offs, have to build experience, be able to track user experience, do things. So I think that is also just to add, I mean, apart from this, why a lot of the folks in e-commerce or otherwise also, right, feel like where I feel like if given the right opportunity, a lot of them will be able to actually do a good job. But again, time. You're always against time.
I deeply respect PMs who come from outside financial services and who adapt to
Exactly.
fintech. I deeply respect them because I understand it's a little bit of a frustrating journey for them, because while they can think of a particular flow, when it comes out and when they realize that, oh, this can't be done because X regulation doesn't allow it, or because of the fact that internal compliance has said it cannot be done, or because of the fact that there is a legal requirement which is not being fulfilled because of it, I'm sure they get frustrated because of it, right? But traveling through that and understanding why the regulation has been in the first place, and then understanding how can the regulation be still taken care of with the advantage which I wanted to build in this flow, those are extremely rare and extremely good PMs, and I deeply respect them. At the same time, the core, so I have seen very, very, very good product managers, product leaders, in fact, who have never worked in a fintech environment, but have garnered ridiculously deep understanding of their domains. It could be a person in logistics. It could be a person in food delivery. It could be a person in any of these areas.
True.
I respect depth. I think that is where I come from, right? So I come from a place where depth is necessary, and that's why probably I look at PMs and I see how deep can this person go in his or her chosen subject. That gives me a very good idea of whether that person would be able to survive and thrive in fintech, right?
No, very true.
So we talked about fintech. We talked about the knee. Let's talk a little bit about where your journey has brought you. What exactly is exciting you in your current role, and what you would want to build out in the future?
I think we've discussed a lot of it on the journey side. I think same thing, right? I think as a fintech PM, or rather, started off on lending, got to see a lot of some interesting, like I can't fully disclose, but build some lending products which was way ahead of time. Failed for the right reasons, to be honest, because we ran into certain constraints from I wouldn't say not regulated, but more fundraising generally. So I think that's where for me, it was a very eye opener that you need to also be cognizant of not just regulations, etc., but be aware. Okay, what does my economics looking like? Do I have that kind of time horizon? That was my learn. So started on the unsecured side, then it was SME lending for me. I think again when I joined, basically SME was just taking off in 17, 16. There were a couple of NBFCs doing a fairly good job, but again I think it's been a very interesting experience where, like, I would not say I was at the right place at the right time everywhere, but I definitely feel that
100%.
I've tried to index on learning than indexing on maybe earning or just a brand. And maybe because I've been with startups, I've tried to always go after growth stage companies, or maybe Series A Max, Series B. I think is the most highest funded startup.
So you had a lot of fun, basically. That's what you want to say.
Yeah. So it's fun. A lot of learning. I got to see a lot of interesting things. So I saw UPI being built out in front of me. I saw mandates being built out in front of me. I can similarly a lot on the payment side. Literally, even on the payment side, a lot of new products like virtual account, a lot of things which, like, even now people outside the industry like think, hey, they take it for granted.
Yeah.
So I think that helped a lot. And obviously I was based out of Mumbai, so again, it's the heart of everything. In PC, I was just getting into thick of things. So saw a lot of things there. RBI also started becoming a bit more broad-minded on the digital lending. So that's how my experience has been. Then lending coming more on the consumer side with a very big name in the industry. So, and then then after a while, I actually started questioning myself that, hey, look, I've been doing lending now since like for 6 years. Should I actually be doing more of it? Or should I, I'm definitely having fun, but end of the day, you're still building the same onboarding, you're still trying to do the same set of things. What can I do differently? Right? I mean, again, within the space, and of course, I'll be shameless in saying that I did not get many interview rounds with anything. All the calls, people would pound me with calls, all fintechs, but non-fintechs. I would say that I hardly got any calls, even with networks.
Yeah.
So again, I think that is another challenge. But again, I acknowledge that it's helped in a way for me to be focused. So I spent 3+ years in the SaaS, saw the entire payment rails being again built out.
Yeah.
PACB, like cross-border transactions, payment aggregator thing. So I think gave me a flavor. But again, I felt that look, uh, kind of what you said. You've been in lending, now you moved to SaaS. So I kind of did that. So I was like, hey, let me try the other way around now. I've seen the entire unsecured space. I wouldn't say I know everything. There's a lot to be
Yeah. Yeah. None of us do.
but I was like, let me try secured. And that's how my current company, Volt Money, happened about. So ran into the founders and I was like, hey, looks interesting. I went into the loan against mutual funds, loan against the entire digital space, where worked very closely with low industry leading NBFCs as well as ecosystem to enable it. And now it's more of, so the 0 to 1 or 0 to 3, 4 is what we like to call is done. So I think now the fun starts is how do you ramp up the real business impact, working with partners, working with ecosystem. I think that's now I want to actually I've been in the 0 to 1, 1 to 10, to some extent maybe 10 to 20. Now I actually want to see the 20 to 100 or no. So I would say that's where I think I'm headed or I want to be headed and learn along the way, obviously with some incredible colleagues, not just obviously world, but partners. We have the fortune of working with great leaders from business, risk, operations. So yeah, I think being there, I think with had some great colleagues along the way. I think also, as you said, like lending is something you don't get to learn by reading. You only can get to know by talking. So I'd say I'm very thankful to the opportunities, crazy good colleagues, and who've been very supportive, who came from old school banks, NBFCs, and who actually made me think harder than I would have as a PM, saying, why are we doing this? Is this really, really required?
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, let's see how it feels.
No, I think Volt Money is going to be a game changer because these are very niche segments which you guys have picked up and you're trying to figure out opportunity in those segments. So I think that's the correct way of going about it instead of broad basing and trying to do everything. I don't think it will be justice if we end this conversation without mentioning probably the topic which is going on literally everywhere, which is AI, right? There was a beautiful article which I read saying that AI is going to replace PMs. So I don't know if AI can replace anything. I'm not remotely as understanding of AI as I am of Fintech. So I won't try to be a pundit. But do you think at some point of time AI can replace product management?
So I think that's a very interesting question. Again, a lot of folks, I think, especially now with a lot of buzzwords around AI, every interview I'm asked, what are you guys doing in AI? What will I get to do in AI? So I tend to index on the problem solving side of things. And will AI replace a PM? I like to think the answer is no. But will AI replace maybe the number of PMs you need? Or even developers or QAs or any other functions?
Efficiency.
Efficiency,
Yeah,
yes.
definitely.
But do we see the AI ecosystem replacing a PM? That real critical thinking. And when you combine again with the context of the company, the domain or the broader industry, the ecosystem, and the actual hard thinking, I like to think the answer is a big no. It will help you become efficient, help you make your best use of your time. You can do a lot of research which would have taken you 2 to 3 days.
Build prototypes quicker.
Exactly, right? I mean, you don't need developer bandwidth to test out. You can simply try out,
build a prototype, put it in the market, get feedback,
so
do all that.
Yes, so makes you, I would say, PMs need to now become more
efficient,
effective in leveraging their own time and skill sets. Right? I mean, that's the way. But I think a lot of the PMs still, not just PMs, I would say a lot of folks still have that paranoia that, hey, I'll get replaced. I would say most people who want to let go of people, they're just using AI as a reason. Is what I like to think.
Oh my God, that you touched on now. Okay.
I don't want to get into it, but I like to think, yes, even for me, I think my team uses a lot of AI, like pretty much 3 to 4 tools across product design. So I think naturally it's a natural evolution. Almost of us use project management tools. We become now smarter, like it's built in better tracking, better reporting. Now I think it's a natural evolution. As an individual, you have to evolve, you have to adapt. And I think the same thing, right? Who cannot adapt, like you said, people non-fintech coming into fintech. I think that's what do you think?
The funny thing is that in the same book where it was written, at the beginning we mentioned this, that the product manager is the CEO of the product. In the same book, there was another thing which was mentioned, which was product management is an art, not a science. While the second one would something which we really substantiate why AI can't replace product managers. I don't think that it is completely true. The science part of product management will be replaced. What I mean by that is that I don't think product managers will ever able to sit down and say that, hey, you know what, I've created a decision matrix. These are all my parameters, and this is what the decision is. This is the and if you as product managers have not done a decision matrix or not done weighting of different factors and selected the best outcome, I would suggest that as an exercise. That is a beautiful exercise for you. But that exercises like that, and the information sources for that will become faster with AI. But I completely agree with you. At the end of the day, it's only going to increase the effectiveness and efficiency. But the softer aspects of influencing and the softer aspects of problem solving and ensuring that the customer's unsaid needs are understood, I don't think AI is there yet.
Agreed.
Yet.
I agree.
Anyway.
I don't expect it to be also, to be very honest.
I wouldn't go that far.
At least the Indian audience is not something I think who like the AI. They still want to talk to people, rant or to support. Or
like that is the reason why there is a so there was a beautiful tweet just today morning I saw where personal finance advice using using ChatGPT is much better than any of the others. That has been there for the last 20 years that you could have Googled it.
Exactly.
But wealth management, human being is needed because of the fact that you can't trust a non-person.
True.
But anyway, that's a very, 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 very big and a very big quagmire to get into. I have one last question, but before that, I wanted to thank you for taking out the time, because this is not, this is probably something which we have been able to do only with the support of people like you who have given their time, energy, thought process on sharing things with us. Thank you for coming onto the Perfios podcast. I hope that the product managers who are there on the call and non-product managers who are there on the call, fintech professionals who are there on the call, take something away from this conversation. And obviously, most important thing is engage. Me and Gautam are available on LinkedIn, on multiple forums, and we're pretty much easily available. Both of us don't have very hectic jobs. I think we are very. We sit and do nothing. We sit and do nothing all day.
I do.
We don't have any.
I'm hiring. I'm still have a lot of hiring to do. So maybe post closing my openings, I would be in your place and say that, go, hey, why don't you ping me?
Saying that a PM has no work is like the funniest thing possible. But
I've heard that a lot from people, by the way, saying, what do you guys do? Just sit and think.
Just sit and think. Anyway, I'd like to end with one last question, right? I think, do you think that PMs are overpaid?
I am not.
I think now we can end the podcast. At that beautiful note, I think we can.
My answer is clear. I am not. But there are folks who are.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.